So great. I will call this meeting to order. The February 15th, 2024 Transportation Advisory Committee for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Government. We're going to go through and do introductions and establish a quorum of voting members. My name is Gail Sturdivant. I'm the Acting Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs. I'm also the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee and a voting member for the City of Colorado Springs. I will just let you know now that I am going to have to step away just a little before 2 o'clock, and I will be turning it over to the second vice chair to run the remainder of the meeting at that time. And Todd Frisbee from the City of Colorado Springs will be the voting alternate at that point. As he walks in, perfect, he just took the seat. So Todd, maybe you can kick off introductions and go around the room from there, please.
Okay. Todd Frisbee, City of Colorado Springs.
I'm Scott Skinner. I'm the new transit liaison for Region 2.
Lindsay Hawkes, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Jeff Guthrie, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Matt Pettit, CDOT Region 2 Local Agency.
Lachelle Davis, CDOT Region 2 Local Agency.
Junior Rodriguez, CDOT Region 2 Local Agency.
Landrail Transit, Mountain Metro Transit.
Hello, I'm Dawn Collins, the town administrator with the town of Palmer Lake.
Jason Dosh, town of Palmer Lake Public Works Supervisor.
Start man walking.
Oh.
Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator, PPACG.
John Lusatos, PPACG.
Janelle Miller, PPACG.
Jess Bechtel, PPACG.
Okay, and Jared, can you help me go through the ones that are online? Actually, I can see him today. Ben?
Ben Schmidt. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Schmidt.
Sorry, Ben. Ben Schmidt, Public Works Director, City Woodland Park.
Okay, other Ben.
Ben Sheets, City Engineer for Fountain.
Okay, and it looks like Aaron from Federal Highways.
This is Aaron Busto from Federal Highways.
Kathleen.
Kathleen Collins, CDOT Statewide and Regional Planning.
All right. Jacob.
Jacob Matson with Mountain Metro Transit.
Chris.
Chris Padilla with the Colorado Springs Airport.
All right, and then Phil.
Hi all, Phil Von Hake, Multimodal Planning Liaison for Air Quality with CDOT.
Okay. All right, great. I will look to the PPACG staff just to confirm we have a quorum. For my count, we do.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then could you also, for the staff in the room, from what we saw, I did not see that there was a representative from Manitou Springs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we established that we have a quorum. The next is going to be an approval of the agenda. One of the reasons why I was asking why if Manitou's rep was there, who has been Dole Grabenik. Today would have been his last meeting, but apparently he's not here or is going to be running late today. And today is also Jason's last day at Junitech, because he's going to be leaving Palmer Lake to go to El Paso County in a different role. So I would propose that at the end of the meeting that we have an item to recognize their service.
Do I need to make a motion on that, Gail?
Yeah. Well, you need to make a motion to approve the agenda with my added item.
I'll make that motion.
This is Lance. I'll second.
All right, so we've got a motion from Jason, a second from Lan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, we have an agenda. All right, let's open this up for public comment or presentations for items that are not currently on the agenda. So Jared, I will turn to you to see if you had anyone sign up virtually or in person today.
We did not, and Madam Chair, I can just take it from here. I'll ask that anyone who's in the room who is not a member of TAC to please go up to the podium at this time. In the meantime, I will ask anyone who is online who is not a member of the TAC to please use the raise hand function if you'd like to make a public comment. While we're waiting for both those things to happen, I will let you and the TAC know that we did not receive any advance requests for public comment, and we did not receive any submitted public comment that we would have distributed to the TAC. As I've gone through all of that, no one is at the podium and no one has raised their hands in the Teams meeting.
Well, great. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes. Everyone had the minutes in their packet for their review. Are there any discussion or motions for the minutes?
This is Jason. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
I'll second Len.
Okay, so I got a motion from Jason and a second from Lan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, the minutes are approved. I'll turn it over to the PPACG staff for the Board of Directors report.
Good afternoon. We did hold the Board of Directors meeting yesterday here at PPACG. We did have the annual safety target setting item that went through the board yesterday, and that was approved to support the CDOT targets. We did have some discussion there about adding a couple of words to the resolution to make sure that it was clear that it was that it wasn't perceived as a goal of a certain number of fatalities. It was not to exceed. So there was a little bit of wordsmithing there, but otherwise that item was approved. And then we also did, after the board meeting, have a safety workshop to talk about all of the items that PPACG has been doing in the world of traffic safety, traffic safety education. And then we also brought in a few of our partners to answer questions as well. And thank you to Todd Frisbee for coming and being available for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions? All right, we'll move on to item 6A and turn it over to Jess to talk about the fiscal year 25 to 29 tip document.
Yes, thank you. So Jess Bechtel, PPACG tip planner. So the FY 25-29 tip document has gone through the review process. It's been we had recently the public comment period of 30 days that just ended on the 10th, and we had an open house recently as well. And so now we bring to you the draft for recommendation to have the board approve it in March. So public comment that we received is included in the document in the appendices, as well as was provided as a summary here in the meeting materials. We're here for any last minute changes, recommendations, but otherwise I just ask for the approval to move it along.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.
Turn it back over to the committee. Any further discussion or a motion?
Motion, so we'll have to start over again.
Oh, no.
Victoria, looks like you're online. Thank you.
I am. You're welcome. I only am making a motion so you knew I was here, Gail.
Well, thank you. No, I'm glad you said something. Thank you for joining us. So for the record, that Victoria Chavez from El Paso County is also present. So thank you for that. Go ahead.
I will move approval of this item.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is Jason. I'll second. Yeah, this is
perfect. Jason. Is this going to be the deal, Jason? You have to get a motion in on every single one. Your
if
last
I didn't,
meeting.
you'd be mad at me.
This is true. Just remember this, everyone, members of the TAC, that when Jason leaves, someone else is going to need to proactively make the motion. So we have a motion from Victoria and a second from Jason to approve the fiscal year 25 to 29 tip document out for adoption.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, so that passes. Moving on to item 6B to 5310 funding recommendations. Laura?
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Gail. Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator. We have gone through our initial review of the applications from our super call that we did for the Older Americans Act dollars, as well as the $5310 for our area. PPACG switched 2 years ago to a 2-year contract with providers from a 1-year contract, just to kind of relieve some of the administrative burden on PPACG as well as the providers having to turn right around and do another application as soon as they finished one. So we have been through the initial review with our technical review subcommittee of our regional advisory committee. The Regional Advisory Committee is the committee that guides the Area Agency on Aging on all things aging, and guides us on the investments that we make with the funding that's available to us through the state and through the federal dollars. And so the TRS met a few weeks ago to discuss each one of the applications. I just want to note that they were looking at 21 applications overall. Not all of those were transportation related. So they are looking at a lot of different funding sources at one time, as well as different types of services being offered. But the interesting part of us moving this review for 5310 underneath the technical review subcommittee is they are able to look at the available dollars through the Older Americans Act and through 5310 and the funding that we receive from the city for PPRTA, and look at it from a holistic perspective when it comes to the applications and projects that are being suggested by our providers. So what you are seeing before you today is the recommendations from the TRS committee. We did score the applications. Applications are looked at from a subjective and objective scenario. So both of our applicants for 5310 funding have been agencies working with PPACG for quite some time. So we were able to kind of look at what their, from an objective perspective, their spend down, their spend down in terms of the funding, what their needs were in terms of their request, what's the overall arching goals that align with PPACG's strategic plan, the AAA's 4-year plan, and our community or specialized transit plan. And so taking those into factoring those in with the subjective scoring, these were the allocations of the funds that were suggested by the TRS for this committee to review. We had over $1 million requested from the providers in terms of 5310 and PPRTA. That was over what we had available and budgeted for this year. We tried to do our best to, this is very similar to what it looked like last time in terms of a split, do our best to split that money amongst the two organizations, but also aligning the Older Americans Act funding with the different providers' services to ensure that we are aligning the funding with the type of service that's being requested funding for. So I also included, and this is hot off the press for our providers that are in the room here, because we actually have not presented the full TRS suggestions to the board, to the RAC, which will happen next week, which has all of their services provided and what our funding recommendations are for that. But this is included the Older Americans Act dollars and what the TRS is pushing forward as a recommendation in terms of distribution of Older Americans Act dollars to these agencies as well, so that you guys can see the overall picture of the suggested investments in these programs. So if there's any questions for me.
Yeah, so thank you, Laura. This is Gail Sturdivant. I do have a question, and Lan Rao from Mountain Metro Transit, I'm going to ask for some assistance on this as well. So as I read this memo, and maybe I missed it in your presentation, I'm not seeing how this 5310 is being blended with PPRTA, and I believe the PPRTA portion actually comes from Mountain Metro for the purpose of these programs. So kind of twofold. What is the percent split between 5310 and PPRTA? So that's question one. And then two, is the portion that is PPRTA funding, is that consistent with what Mountain Metro is providing?
That's a great question, and I can answer that. So, and this is kind of a conversation that Lan and I have gone back and forth with as we're kind of making decisions with these funds. One of the things that we are utilizing PPRTA funding for is actually reducing the match requirement or supplementing the match requirement for our agencies. There's a 20% match on these funds, on the 5310 funds. And so we're using a portion of the PPRTA funding to provide for those, provide part of that match. I just also want to note to folks in the room, 5310 is not the easiest funding for our agencies to administer because of the lack of support from the regulations of the program to provide for admin and indirect cost. So they cannot actually recoup any funding for admin and indirect under 5310. And so we thought that it was a good way for us to help support the agencies that may struggle with that match requirement. So reducing that match requirement, utilizing PPRTA funds, more aligns with the Older Americans Act match requirement, which is 10% for transportation. So that is a portion. If you want to do the math, and I have a much broader spreadsheet of what that looks like by agency. Essentially, it's 20% of their 5310, additional 20% of their 5310 is what makes up that PPRTA funding. And originally in conversations around PPRTA, because I remember the original IGA agreement that came across my desk was that PPRTA funding, one of the main functions was to help with the match requirement of 5310. Secondly, we have a new program that actually Envita has been piloting for the past couple of years. Well, year. It's an on-demand transportation pilot. And both agencies, Envita and Silver Key, are wanting to continue that program, expand that program, continue testing that program. And so utilizing PPRTA dollars as well to fulfill a different type of need within the organizations and within the community. So Gail, I can send out that direct split, but I do want you guys to know where that funding is going.
Well, thank you, Laura, for the explanation. I will tell you, I don't know that you actually have made that clear exactly how that funding works, but maybe just to restate it, is that the 5310 really doesn't have a match, but the 10% of equivalent of the 5310 is being provided in PPRTA funds from Mountain Metro to PPACG to administer the program. Correct?
I'm looking at Lan.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, we do have an IGA between Mountain Metro and PPACG in the amount of $220,000 per year. So that dollar amount is not reflected in this table. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's included. I lumped them together.
As part of the effort, but what you have in this packet only reflects the grant amount that you are allocating to
that is the blend of the PPRTA and 5310 funding per agency.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the 10% of 5310 that's eligible for admin is carved out from the top of the 5310 allocation.
So there is under 5310, there's the ability to utilize 10% of the overall apportionment for indirect and admin. Now, PPACG uses that carve out of that 10% for us to administer the program. That's our funding source. The PPRTA money that we get from the city, that funding is used directly for services. It is not used for any indirect for PPACG. We did have additional funding from MMT a few years ago, I think 124,000, to help out with our initial admin and indirect cost that was over the 10% that we would recoup from 5310. And so that being said, yes, that the 10% that we're utilizing for PPRTA to help subsidize the 20% match requirement for the agency partners, that is essentially going to direct service. Yeah.
Basically, the 220 is being used as the match for the other remaining 90% of the 5310, and the providers don't have to come up and find other local.
Correct.
In order to be able to receive.
They have to come up with 10%. Yes.
10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just if y'all want it broken down a little bit more, I can do that as well. So we have the subsidy that we utilize for the subsidy of the match for $5310, as well as we have $130,000, about $130,000 budgeted of that PPRTA to help with supplementing for these on-demand transportation rides as well.
Madam Chair, I have one more question.
Yes, please.
So are the providers aware of this funding allocation recommendation?
Yes, I sent them the packet ahead of time.
And they're comfortable with the allocation also?
I see one head shaking.
So
reluctant, yes.
let me ask you a different question, Laura. If this item was not approved today, would there be an impact to the services that Silver Key and Envita could provide or for their budget?
If this wasn't approved for recommendation to the board, or for the board to open up a public comment period this next board meeting, then it would make it very difficult for us to hit the contracting deadline of July 1st. So it would impact their ability to access funds until approval.
Okay. Well, I don't want to have an impact to their operation. And since you have to open it up for public comment, this would be coming back to the TAC, correct? For a final recommendation?
I think in our program management plan, it's a recommendation to, and I'm looking at John, it's a recommendation from the TAC to the board. Board does a 30-day public comment period, and then the board votes based upon those comments. That's how we managed it in the past. But I'm letting John weigh in here.
So yeah, you're looking at me, and I must admit, why? Because I have not seen your schedule, right?
Yep.
So typically when we put together a schedule, Gail, here, if at all possible, we take it once through TAC, take it to the board once to release for public comment, because obviously once it's out for public comment, that's as good as anything else. And all of a sudden people start getting picking it apart. So we always want to make sure the board sees something before a public comment. And it sounds like, Laura, that you're doing that. Then for us, normally within transportation, we run it through again to say, okay, we've released it for public comment. These are the comments we've received, and then we ask for your approval. So you at TAC will normally see things twice, and then the board will see things twice. That being said, we have, I don't want to say violated that rule or broken that rule, but there have been times that the schedule has been such that it's been out of our control, where we've skipped one of the sort of information items. So again, Laura, and again, you and I have not chatted about this, so hopefully you're not like wanting to stick a knife in my back, but
No, it's okay.
I am unaware of your schedule of when things need to get released and when they come back. So if you didn't have in your schedule coming back to TAC before because of time reasons, I think that's what Scale is asking. But that being said, if you
That's some
have
of the beginning
ability
of
to-
my question.
Yeah, all right, well.
Because I am not actually comfortable with the information or the incomplete information presented in this memo. And even the draft recommendation in this memo does not make sense for what we've just heard. So, but I also do not want to cause any harm to these service providers. They're very important for our community. So I would be comfortable if we were just opening it up to a 30-day comment period. If it was going to be coming back to attack, let's say next month with a better funding picture, one, understanding of the schedule and implications of what this is, what's needed to make sure these services are continuing. But I'm more concerned about having a complete funding picture and having an appropriately written recommendation, because it does not make sense for what we just talked about.
Yeah, I think there's a ability for us to bring this back after it's opened up by the opened up for 30-day public comment period by the board of directors. And we can change that recommendation for the TAC and then come back. Obviously, the TAC is right after that board meeting, but come back to the TAC with a revised memo with some of this detail that you're requesting. And I'll probably go back to you offline to make sure that I've included what you've asked for. But I think there's leeway in doing that. I don't know if we have the timing to come back again to the TAC in April to be able to accomplish that and get it all set up for contracting. But we can definitely bring this back next month.
Yeah, so you can
Okay.
bring it back next month. And when does Jared, when does the board packet go out for then? I have a feeling we can accomplish some of the corrections before it goes out in the board packet, since we just had the board yesterday.
And we're talking about the March meeting, correct?
Yes.
So the March meeting would take place on the 13th, which means packets would usually go out on the 6th. Usually staff memos for initial review are due on the 1st.
So
Yep,
we
can
can,
do that.
so what we'd like to do, Gail, then is get with you and your staff and make sure that we have language that makes sense as far as the recommendation and other stuff. So that way the board won't see the version that you're seeing. The board will see a much better version that you've helped us improve upon, and for their approval to set out for public comment. After they've set it out for public comment, I believe the very next day will be this TAC meeting. And hopefully by that time, everything will be worked. Nope, is not. No.
Because of the leap day.
Dang, leap
It would be
day.
the TAC would be on the 21st.
So
after the
21st.
Board meeting on the
So,
15th.
but the board meeting will happen first, and then we'll have,
Correct. But
some
it'll be a
time.
week span, not one day.
so not only we have the knowledge of the board, but we'll have knowledge of 1 week's worth of public comments that we can share. But anyway, it comes after. So when we do bring it to you in March, which apparently now is March 21st because of the frogs taking over, we'll be able to come back to you for that approval at that time. So I think maybe it's not perfect, but I think we're getting to the spirit of what you're requesting. Some changes to the memo, which we can do here in the next couple of days, kind of thing, as well as bring it back for approval based on a new and improved, more inclusive version of the memo.
Okay,
Does that work?
I would be okay with that. The other thing I would ask is you go back and we look at their policy on this, because I would have expected to have the public comment in its entirety come back to the TAC before referring it to the board. So if that's not the case, fine, but I would like a clarification on that as well.
Yeah, again, in a perfect world, we would do this, and again, I'm not trying to put Laura on the spot. I have no idea how the schedule worked out where it did, but I would concur that normally we like to sort of have, when we come in and ask for adoption, it would include the public comment information. But again, sometimes these things are out of our control based on when we actually get the notice to, or the funding, the notice of funding, and then when we can actually schedule stuff. So, but yes, I think typically we do try to do it exactly as you're suggesting.
Okay. All right, well, then that also needs to be clear that we're bypassing our policies and procedures, if that's the case, in the memo as well. So I think the revised motion is to refer this to the board to open up public comment with the understanding that PPACG staff will be coming back with additional information next month, but that would be in parallel with that activity. So can I get a motion or a correction or a motion to that?
It's Victoria. Thank you, Gail, for those questions. I had the same ones because I was a little concerned about voting away PPRTA money, not knowing how much of it was of those two sources. So thank you for all of your work on that. And given that, I will move that we recommend the board release this for public comment and suggest that the staff make the changes as requested. And then I'll look forward to seeing it later on. That last part is not part of my motion.
You get a second it. Who's gonna go for, come on, someone's got a second.
This is Jason. I'll second.
All right, so I have a motion from Victoria, a second from Jason. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes. Let's move on to the next item. I believe it goes back to Jess.
I think this one actually comes back to me. We have the LRTP status update. And also we provided to you all the latest draft project list, the fiscally constrained project list, just for everyone's review, so that you can let us know if I have made an error in any places that needs to be corrected, and just kind of providing that information to you all. As far as the LRTP goes, we are working on wrapping up the modeling and integrating the projects into that modeling. I believe we've got all of the LRTP projects now mapped, so we should be rolling that into our project analysis and starting on some of our Title VI analysis work. We will be having our fourth meeting of the Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Committee on Tuesday for anyone who is able to attend that. We will be focusing on specialized human services, but we're also interested, and I wanted to bring this to the TAC in case anyone was able to attend. We are interested in including a portion of the meeting talking about the jurisdictional perspective and where the jurisdictions, how the jurisdictions develop projects, the different kind of planning processes that the jurisdictions have. And that's something that we've kind of reached out to a few of you offline in case that's something you can support. We will probably be talking to you again. We have also, last month, we noted that we put out an RFP for phase 2 of that public outreach effort, primarily focused on the public comment period and open houses. And we have selected Kearns and West to continue working on that portion of the LRTP. Some of the component plans that we're working on, Olson is working on the initial phases of the active transportation plan. There is a active transportation plan survey that I believe is live currently. Don't have a firm end date on that. I think we were kind of seeing how much response it was given. But but when I talked with Jason earlier, he said sometime in the spring that would be ending. Lan or Jacob or Laura, would you like to give an update on the transit plan and the coordinated human services plans?
Sure, I can jump in here. This is Jacob with Mountain Metro Transit. So update on both of those plans. The regional transit plan, we'll be having our first stakeholder meeting here coming up next week on Wednesday. So we're excited for that to convene that group. And then also on the same day on that Wednesday, we'll be having our first stakeholder meeting for the specialized transportation plan. And then again, as was already commented on, that we are meeting for that LRTP, the Rat Pack meeting there on Tuesday, where the specialized transportation plan will have a strong part of that agenda. So those are my updates.
Thank you, Jacob. And I think that's really about it. We are including the LRTP as an action item this week, just in case there are any items that any TAC members wanted to discuss, or if there were any issues with the project list that you saw to this point. Happy to take any comments or questions at this point, but I don't believe there is any action necessary. Is that correct, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just a figurehead. You're doing all the work.
Yeah, I didn't hear that you brought up anything that required our action, but I'll turn it over to the members of the committee. Anyone else feel differently? All right,
And if we-
hearing none. So I think there's no formal action then on that. So let's move on to item 7A. And then I may have to step out. The mayor is not here yet, but when I do, Jason, I will turn it over to you. But Danielle, if you could start kicking this off, I'd like to stick around for this as much as I can today, if possible.
And just as she's calling that up, Gail did want to thank everybody for all their work putting together the project list. I know it's on top of all of your other work. So everyone's efforts is very much appreciated to get us the information we needed. So thank you all very much.
Absolutely. So item 7A, this is just an information item. You'll see this a few times. We, as you all know, there are a few different performance measurement targets that are established by the Code of Federal Regulations. There is a new rule, a new final rule that was developed by the FHWA in November that establishes a greenhouse gas emissions target. And this is just on the national highway system. So we actually thought we might have some additional information for you this month regarding the CDOT target. However, the deadline for states to develop the initial target has been pushed back. So CDOT's deadline for the initial target is actually March 29th. After that point, we will then, as the MPO, have 180 days to either support that target or develop our own. And we just wanted to bring it to everybody to make sure that you're aware that this is a new thing that will be coming, and also that it is a separate item from the greenhouse gas rulemaking here in the state of Colorado. So it does not impact the modeling. It's a completely separate item. At this point, FHWA has said that it will not impact any funding. At least initially. It may in the future. But we also have Will Mast here, who is our expert in how the development of these greenhouse gas targets may be developed. And so he is here for any questions you might have on the technical side.
And Gail, if I might, and Will, you rush to the mic if I get this wrong, but otherwise you could stay where you're at. My understanding, oh wow, such a lack of confidence. All right, but so everybody knows, my understanding is, again, what they're doing is they're going to take sort of the whole state and take the vehicle miles traveled and take it by gallons of fuel sold and sort of do some math, and then they're going to redistribute it back on the vehicle miles traveled within the different regions. So it's not like we're getting a very personalized sort of Pikes Peak region, a very personalized Denver. They're sort of doing it, the whole state as an aggregate, and then splitting up the birthday cake based on your vehicle miles traveled. Was I not even close, Will?
No, you were pretty much right on. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what's being proposed. It seems like that's what's going to happen. And again, we really want to emphasize this is completely separate from all the GHG rulemaking that we have to follow at the state level for modeling and project selection and going before the Transportation Commission to approve LRTP projects and stuff. That's all still on the horizon. This is strictly for really an additional metric for the highway performance monitoring that CDOT has to comply with. And so they're trying to keep it simple, and effectively they are looking at just taking the entire fuel sales for the state and looking at how much of that is gasoline and how much of it is gasoline alternatives, which includes diesel and ethanol and such. And then they're going to look at the VMT on just the National Highway System roads. So not all the roads, just the NHS roads. And then they're going to say, okay, PPACG, your MPO area has this percentage of the National Highway System, all the roads and all the VMT on those roads in the state. And therefore, you're going to get that percentage of assumed gasoline, diesel, and ethanol sales. And then they're going to calculate the GHG impact of that. And then that's our GHG metric. And then they're going to have to set a reduction goal. And that's where I think CDOT right now, the powers that be are kind of working on it, because clearly what we want to do with the GHG roadmap that the state is setting for the MPOs is very, very aggressive. But I think what they're looking at for this rule is trying to come up with something that they feel is maybe a target that's maybe more manageable. And so they're somewhere between like a 3% reduction, which might be more realistic and feasible, versus trying to hit like a 30% reduction, which is going to be very, very difficult. And so there's some discussions going on about how aggressive that needs to be. We then in turn will have to decide in the future if we are going to adopt the exact same reduction goal as CDOT or not, or come up with our own. And if we're going to use the same method or come up with our own. So we have 180 days to do that. And then we will not have to report anything back to the feds, but we do have to report it back to CDOT, who's going to compile that for all the MPOs and then all the rural areas and regions, the TPRs that they manage. And then that will be part of the reporting that CDOT has to put together back to the FHWA. So it does not affect currently any funding or any other requirements. It's strictly about whether or not we're going to accept whatever reduction goal CDOT comes up with and the method by which they want to calculate it. That's it.
Yep. Thanks, Will. So again, why we're making sure you're informed is, one, we don't know necessarily how CDOT is going to move forward with this. So if it could be something very benign and no big deal, or it could be something that, again, the way they approach it, all apologies to the CDOT folks in the room, I'm not talking about you guys, and Kathleen, I'm not talking about you guys, but there is that possibility that they could use this for something that may impact you. So additionally, on our side of the fence, given sort of the political realities, when we bring that sort of thing and say we're going to do this as a GHG target, it could become a very charged political discussion at our board. And then therefore they might say, well, it doesn't matter what CDOT wants to do. We're not agreeing with anything GHG related with CDOT. And the board might ask us to do something different. So at this point, don't think it has any impact on anything that you guys are doing or your projects, but it is out there, and it could become political on either side of the equation. So we wanted to make sure everybody was well informed that it was going on. So I think with that, that's as much background as we can give you, because that's all we really know. But happy to answer any questions or have Will answer any questions.
Go ahead, Victoria. You're also
she's
muted.
on mute.
You're muted too.
Okay, I think I have it now. Quick question. Could somebody send out some websites or some information about where this is located so that we can actually put our hands on this regulation and look at it?
Yes, I can do that right after this meeting. Absolutely.
Okay, and then any contacts, questions for CDOT? Are there any contacts from CDOT about who's doing this, how, where, in case we have questions for CDOT?
Yes, I can provide that information as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm going to move on. You missed a good lunchtime discussion on this one, Victoria. You would have loved it. All right, let's move on to item 7B, open records. Jared.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the TAC. My name is Jared Verner, Public Information Officer at PPACG, in case we haven't run into each other before. We are doing something at PPACG. We're doing this to all of our committees, report to the Board of Directors, so don't think that you guys are special. But this is essentially an opportunity for us to just ensure compliance just across our committees, and there's better understanding of what we can do to be preventative on this. This is not reactionary. We are not being forced to do this, but this is an opportunity for us to just make sure that everyone knows all the rules. I'm assuming, oh, excuse me.
And Jared, while you're stepping away, I do need to turn this over to Jason to finish running the rest of the meeting. I will rejoin if I am able.
That works.
Thank you, everyone.
All righty. Sorry about that. I'm running a computer from the podium. So I'm going to assume that as government employees, you all are pretty well aware of the Colorado Open Records Act. Just basically says that all records are open for inspection by any person at any reasonable times. We'll probably go through this section pretty quickly just because, again, as you guys' roles throughout your organizations, I'm assuming this has probably been covered with all of you guys as part of your onboarding process. But as a quasi-governmental agency, PPACG is subject to the open records request. We are just like any other governmental agency, whether it's quasi or not. And I'm sure, as you guys know, that includes documents, photos and videos, emails, team messages, text messages, even work text messages on private devices. That does not include things that are normally covered by privacy protections. At the PPACG area, that is going to be HIPAA for the most part because of our area agency on aging. Personnel records, legal guidance, which I'm sure some of you might have been involved with, as well as work products and drafts of documents before they're final. Just in general, assume that anything that you create is probably going to be subject to an open records request. And as I kind of tell people, we know we don't get to decide what the public decides is important to them. The public gets to make that call. So unless we have a reason to withhold it, we're going to be obligated to release it. This process is probably going to look fairly similar to how you guys work on the jurisdictional side, with the exception of the last bullet point, just because if they're requesting information about one of you individuals, I'm probably going to refer them to your Cora custodian, public information officer, and also let your custodian know that, hey, someone is requesting this information. But for the most part, we have 3 full days to either fulfill or deny a request, ask for clarifying information, or ask for an extension. Anybody can request any document for any reason. They don't need to tell us why they need to request an information, but especially if it's going to be a multi-hour request, we are allowed to charge for that. And we might ask some clarifying information to say, hey, listen, if you're looking for this, can you give us some more background? What are you looking for? Just so that saves my time, saves what we have to charge them. If it's something that we get more detailed information for what they're looking for. And if we have to black it out or redact it for any reason, we just have to explain why we're doing that. Again, this is something that because of the nature of this committee is unique. This one is special in that all of you all, for the most part, are government employees with your jurisdictions. So it's a little bit unique as opposed to all our other committees, which are for the most part volunteers. So the core process is going to look a little bit different for the TAC. Any questions on open records? I'm not assuming there's too many before I jump into open meetings. Okay, open meetings law, similar to open records, but there are quite a few differences. For the purpose of an open meetings law, any kind of gathering convened to discuss public business by any means that there are, and they list out in the statute, telephone, in-person, electronic, or any means of communication, email, text messages, side conversations are all part of that. With the exception of if you're having a discussion to plan when you're going to have a discussion, that is not subject to open meetings. If you're just trying to figure out when everyone's free to take a place of a meeting. The magic number is 3. So 3 or more members of any committee or group or commission or whatever triggers an open meetings law. PPACG staff don't count towards that 3-person limit. Part of that requirement is we are provided by 24-hour notice of when that meeting is going to take place, as well as any topics that are going to be discussed at that meeting. Best practice is if you think something could be discussed and it may or may not be, put it on there. Just how we do agenda approvals, it's a lot easier to take something off than it is to add it back in, because if it hasn't been properly noticed in that 24-hour window, technically the public has not had a right to hear it, and we should postpone that to the next meeting. And Don, feel free to jump in, because I know, pretty sure you know this all too. Okay, so this, oh, I went too far. This is what I stole from the Colorado Attorney General Office. They just kind of went through a couple of different scenarios on what is and isn't a public meeting. So just because action isn't taken, that is not the criteria for a public meeting. So if it's a rulemaking session or a work session, that is considered a public meeting still, as long as you have 3 or more members of the committee who are going to be attending that, or could have up to 3 members. Side conversations during meeting breaks, technically, if it's 3 or more, would fall under an open meetings. Right after the state got dinged for this, because their requirement is 2, there were, I would say, some relatively flippant remarks, and I'll use that word intentionally, about, if they're going to lunch together, if 2 or more, representatives or senators, that they were declaring that during as they're about to go into a recess. But that's technically right. That is technically an open meeting. Meals and social events. So as I say, lunch. No, but there's a big but. If committee business is going to be discussed, then yes. And the example I'll use, and the city does a really good job with this, if it's an opening of a facility, a ribbon cutting, a groundbreaking, something like that, and the TAC is being invited as TAC members, we would probably notice it, and the notice is going to be simply as, 3 or more members of the Transportation Advisory Committee may be present at the groundbreaking for Smith Road on, February 30th. Yeah, that was unintentional. Just because there is no. But anyway, so just laying it out there. It's one of those things. It seems kind of really, but that is the law, and we do have to follow it. I mentioned this already, but if you're discussing when you're going to meet, that is not subject to open meetings law. If you're just talking about, hey, is everyone free on Monday at 2? Great. And then please let me know before Sunday at 2 that you're meeting on Monday at 2. Can I meet with someone and then they can relay that to another member? So I'm going to use our staff as an example. So if I talk to Danelle talks to Jess, and Jess relays what they talk to me. We never had 3 people at any one time, but we did have essentially 3 people in that discussion. The case law is still pending on this, but the initial ruling is that is not allowed. That is called a serial meeting. There was a school board north that got dinged for that specifically. And I think that's all I've got to scare everyone. Any questions?
If we have a meeting about Lucky Charms, is that a serial meeting?
I don't think so, because it's not, unless you were going to do something about a Lucky Charms plant that would require the transportation to support it. How about that?
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jared.
Thank you.
Yep. Good information. All right. Moving on to 7C, CDOT updates. We want to start here in the room.
Kathleen, you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
if you don't mind, because my connections are going in and out.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't even have chat capabilities in the meeting, so apologies. So I'll just do it real quick. There are staff updates. Brian Metzger used to work at DTR. He is back now as the manager of the Program Reporting and Transparency Office. Jan Rowe is now working in DTR as the Assistant Director of Planning and Operations. So he moved over from contracts. And our branch, the Multimodal Planning Branch, has hired 2 interns, Robin Bardmesser and Spencer York. I may have mentioned this previously, but not certain about this meeting. We've also hired a strategic communications specialist. She started this Monday and her name is Sifa Marthalato. And then we are soon to hire another planning liaison, Tess Ritchie. She'll start on the 26th of February, and she's transferring over to our group from the CDOT Research Library. So we're excited to have all that staff. And then in terms of stack updates, the Transportation Commission will begin discussing program distribution for formula programs in March, probably with an approval in April. In terms of the House Bill 23-1101 TPR study, the draft planning rules have been filed with the state for recommended planning process and TPR boundaries changes. There will be hearings on March 6th and 11th, and the public comment period is currently open. At STAC, we also had an update on the state freight and passenger rail plan that was given by the DTR director, Paul DeRocher. We had a legislative report of proposed legislation being considered by the Transportation Review Committee. And then we also did an overview of 2045 statewide plan lessons learned. I have a link that I can share, or actually I'll send it to Danelle instead, since I can't chat. Also, in terms of coordination with Pikes Peak, we have the mid-year review scheduled. It is tentatively scheduled for April 18th. And we also are going to be working on a contract amendment 1 for the Consolidated Planning Grant Program. We're hoping to have those contracts executed by the end of March. And then the next STAC meeting is on March 7th. And there's something else, if Phil is still on the call, I'm thinking he might want to talk about it, the successful Winter Bike to Work Day.
Hey, thanks, Kathleen. Yes, this is Phil Von Hake up at CDOT headquarters, and Winter Bike to Work Day was this past Friday, February 9th. CDOT had a station near headquarters. We had over 100 people ride by, and about half of them stopping for coffee, burrito information. There were a lot of other events around the metro area and around the state, and I'd love to hear if there were any events in Colorado Springs or the Pikes Peak area, or if there's any plans being made for Summer Bike to Work Day, Wednesday, June 26th. So just please let me know, and hopefully we can coordinate and help promote each other's events. Thanks.
I guess it is. On my calendar was a winter bike to work day, and I think it pretty much snowed the whole so BCS may by Colorado Springs may have organized something, but city staff, we didn't do anything, did we? No. We are planning to do a bike to work today, as we do every year in the summer, whatever day that was. June 24th. Was it June 24th? I don't know. 26th. Okay, that was close. So city will be leading that effort as per usual, and so we've hired we'll go through probably similar to last year.
And PPACG, and for that one will, I assume, will be a stop, as we've been, at least for the 6 years I've been here. PPACG has been a stop on that, where we help with our staff to man the station. So, did you do it last year? And we even are giving you our best, some of our best people to work on it.
All right, is there any other CDOT updates here in the room or anything?
No, I just
Yes, Kathleen, did you have something else?
No, just wanted to say that Jacob Kirschner is the contact at CDOT for the performance, greenhouse gas performance topics. And I'll stop now and hand it back over to Jeff. Sorry.
no problem. Thanks, Kathleen. Just again to reintroduce Scott Skinner, our new Region 2 Transit Liaison, brand new to transit planning and liaising. So soft introduction, and we'll try to get a grand tour to get out there and meet everybody in the near future. But thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Going once, anybody else? Good, okay. All right, moving on to 7D, the IIJA updates and other funding opportunities. Danelle?
Yes, so we did include in your packet this month an updated table of federal opportunities. This is a table that is updated regularly by the DOT and includes all of the known and upcoming DOT notices of funding opportunity. Right now, the bridge project NOFO is open for 24 and 25 funding. It's got a couple of different deadlines depending on what year of funding you're looking at. I'm sure you're all aware that RAISE ends at the end of this month. Under the FTA, it's actually not on here, but the FTA bus and bus facilities and also low and no emission bus grants just opened. And I think that's all of the new federal opportunities I've noticed. Under the state funding, the Office of Innovative Mobility call for projects has opened, and the deadline for those applications is March 29th. If you have any interest in applying for any of those funds, please let us know. I'm kind of helping out a little bit with our regional grant navigator program while that spot is open. And so we would really like to help you and also track that information. Speaking of the regional grant navigator position, it is open. There is a listing out there. There's an RFP out there. Hopefully we'll get that funded filled very soon. And we will do anything we can to assist in development of grants in the area.
All right, thanks, Danelle. Any questions for Danelle? All right, moving on to member entity announcements. So I'll start off with saying that, yep, this is my last meeting, and wasn't an easy decision to move on, but learned a lot from everybody and everybody down here at PPACG and all the other, made a lot of friends with all the other entities and governments and stuff. So it's been really great. And I just wanted to introduce Dawn Collins, who's my boss right now, the town clerk for the town, and she's the alternate. So she'll be taking over for me. So going forward. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody, and it's been really great. So
it's awkward that you're chairing the meeting and you know.
I know.
So I'd like to say something nice about you if
that's
all on me.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, Jake, you've been absolutely terrific to work with, and the consummate, regional team player, making sure that we had the right decision for whatever we were doing, and making sure it benefited the whole region. So it's really been great to work with you over these last, I guess I've been here almost 6 years.
Yeah.
So wish you well in your new thing. And if you are around in the area with a crew, our parking lot is a real mess. No, I'm just if you are in the neighborhood, love for you to love for you to stop in, and we can do lunch. But kudos to El Paso County for steering you. You're quality folk.
All right. Hey, thank you very much, John. It's very nice.
Jason, I will echo that sentiment. I am going to miss you on TAC, but I look forward to seeing you in the office. So welcome to El Paso County.
All right. Hey, thank you, Victoria. All right. Any other member entity announcements other than this one? All right, I guess we'll be moving on to items for future tech meetings. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I know Gail's not on anymore, but I did work it out on paper again. I will be able to bring this back to the TAC for after the 30-day public comment period for a review. So we're good to go on that and on that schedule. So that will be a future item.
Okay. Anything else? All right, with that, we'll call adjournment at 2:35.